To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Quiet Life. Ben Ochoa stood at his workbench in the garage, the smell of motor oil and sawdust mixing in the cool evening air. He ran his calloused fingers over the vintage motorcycle engine he'd been rebuilding for the past 3 months, a 1972 Triumph Bonneville that reminded him of simpler times. The rhythmic sound of a socket wrench turning was meditative, almost therapeutic. It hadn't always been this peaceful. 15 years ago, Ben had been a different man. He'd worked for a classified government agency that didn't officially exist, conducting operations in places that would never make the news. His specialty had been infiltration and intelligence gathering, but the job had required skills most people only saw in movies, skills he'd hoped never to use again. He'd seen things that hollowed men out from the inside, done things that kept him awake on bad nights. Then he'd met Jody Delaney at a veterans charity event. She'd been volunteering, serving coffee with a smile that seemed to cut through all the darkness he carried. She'd had a way of making him feel normal, like he could actually have a life beyond the shadows. Within a year, they were married. A year after that, their son was born. Ben had walked away from the agency, taken a generous severance package, and never looked back. He'd opened a custom motorcycle shop in their quiet Colorado suburb, built a good reputation, and raised his son. Life had become predictable, safe, ordinary, exactly what he'd wanted. "Dad," his son's voice echoed from inside the house. "Dinner's almost ready." Ben smiled, wiped his hands on a rag, and headed inside. The house smelled like Jody's famous pot roast, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. His wife was setting the table, her auburn hair pulled back, still wearing her work clothes from her job at the real estate office downtown. "How was work?" Ben asked, kissing her cheek. "Long," she replied, but something flickered in her eyes, something Ben's trained instincts noticed but chose to ignore. "We closed on the Henderson property. Big commission." Their son bounded down the stairs, 16 and full of restless energy. They'd named him after Ben's grandfather, Danny Ochoa. The kid had his mother's green eyes and his father's build, already showing signs of the man he'd become. Dinner was comfortable, filled with Danny's stories about school and his upcoming soccer tournament. Jody talked about a difficult client, and Ben shared his progress on the Triumph. It was normal, mundane, beautiful in its simplicity. But Ben couldn't shake a nagging feeling that had been growing over the past few months. Little things, Jody coming home late, unexplained phone calls she'd take in another room, the way she'd started password protecting her laptop. He'd told himself it was nothing, that he was being paranoid, that his old life was making him see shadows where none existed. That night, after Danny had gone to bed, Ben found Jody on the back porch, staring out at their garden. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You okay?" he asked. She stiffened slightly, then relaxed. "Just tired. Work's been demanding. Anything you want to talk about?" "No," she said quickly. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. Ben could feel it in his bones. The woman in his arms wasn't the same woman he'd married, and he couldn't figure out when the change had happened. Chapter 2. The Breaking Point. 3 days later, Ben was in his shop when he got the call that would shatter his carefully constructed world. "Mr. Ochoa?" The voice on the phone was professional, clipped. "This is Principal Morrison from Denver West High School. We need you to come pick up Danny. There's been an incident." Ben's heart lurched. "Is he hurt?" "No, but there's been a situation. Please come immediately." He closed the shop and drove to the school, his mind racing through possibilities. When he arrived, Danny was sitting in the principal's office, pale and shaking. A police officer stood nearby, and Principal Morrison looked grim. "Mr. Ochoa," Morrison began. Danny was found with a significant amount of cash in his locker. $20,000, to be exact. Ben's blood ran cold. "What?" Danny looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, I swear I can explain. I found it." "Where?" Ben's voice was sharp, his old training taking over. He was already analyzing the situation, looking for angles. The officer stepped forward. "We'd like to know that too. This much cash suggests drug involvement, Mr. Ochoa. We need answers." Ben's mind raced. $20,000. No 16-year-old had legitimate access to that kind of money. "Danny, where did you get this?" His son's voice was barely a whisper. "In Mom's car. This morning." I was looking for my soccer cleats, and I found a duffel bag in the trunk. I don't know what I thought. I just wanted to show Jason at school. The world tilted slightly. Jody's car. Ben forced himself to remain calm, to think like the operative he used to be rather than the terrified father he was becoming. Officer, Ben said evenly, my son isn't involved in drugs. This is obviously a misunderstanding. May I take him home while we sort this out? The officer studied him. We'll need to investigate further. The school is suspending Danny pending an investigation. And Mr. Ochoa? We'll need to speak with your wife. Ben nodded, his jaw tight. He signed Danny out and led him to the truck. Neither spoke until they were halfway home. Dad, Danny's voice cracked. Is Mom in trouble? I don't know, Ben admitted. But we're going to find out. They pulled into the driveway just as another car screeched to a stop behind them. Ben's instincts flared, the vehicle positioning, the aggressive approach. Two men emerged, both wearing cheap suits that screamed federal agents. Ben Ochoa? The older one flashed a badge. I'm Agent Glenn Little, FBI. We need to talk about your wife. Ben's world was collapsing, but his exterior remained calm. What about her? Where is she right now? At work, I assume. What's this about? Agent Little exchanged a glance with his partner. Mr. Ochoa, your wife is a person of interest in an ongoing federal investigation. We have reason to believe she's involved with a criminal organization. We need to search your home. Do you have a warrant? Little produced paperwork. Ben scanned it quickly. It was legitimate. His hands didn't shake as he unlocked the door, though inside, his mind was spiraling. He'd left his old life behind, but somehow, it had found him anyway. Or worse, he'd brought it home without realizing it. The agents spread through the house. Danny sat on the couch, terrified, while Ben stood with his arms crossed, watching. Years of training kept his face neutral, but his mind was racing through possibilities, connections, explanations. His phone buzzed. Jody, coming home early. Need to talk. Important. Ben's jaw clenched. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture he desperately didn't want to see. Chapter 3. The Horrifying Truth. Jody arrived 15 minutes later, her face pale when she saw the FBI agents in their living room. For a split second, Ben saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Cold calculation. What's going on? She asked, but her voice lacked genuine surprise. Agent Little stepped forward. Jody Delaney Ochoa, we need you to answer some questions about your association with Kurt Barrera and the Barrera import-export operation. The name meant nothing to Ben, but the way Jody's face drained of all color told him everything. She knew exactly who Kurt Barrera was. I don't know what you're talking about, Jody said, but her hands were trembling. Really? Little pulled out a folder. Because we have surveillance photos of you meeting with Barrera on multiple occasions. We have financial records showing money transfers. We have testimony from witnesses placing you at his warehouse facility. Mrs. Ochoa, we know you've been working for him. Working for him? Ben's voice was dangerously quiet. Doing what? Jody's eyes filled with tears, but Ben couldn't tell if they were genuine. Ben, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to me? To our son? What the hell is going on, Jody? Mr. Ochoa, Agent Little interrupted. Perhaps you should take your son. No. Ben's tone left no room for argument. Danny stays. He's old enough to know what's happening in his own family. Jody's face crumpled. It started 3 years ago. I made some bad investments, lost money I'd borrowed from the wrong people. Kurt offered to help, said I could work it off. It was supposed to be simple. Just use my real estate business to facilitate some transactions, launder some money through property sales. Money laundering. Ben's voice was ice. You've been laundering money for 3 years? It got more complicated, Jody whispered. Kurt, he's not just into money laundering. He runs a smuggling operation. Weapons, stolen goods, sometimes drugs. I became his logistics coordinator. I'd find properties for his warehouses, set up shell companies, coordinate shipments. The money Danny found, it was payment for a job. I'd hidden it in my car, was supposed to deliver it to a drop point. Danny made a small, wounded sound. Ben's heart broke for his son, but he kept his focus on Jody. How much? He asked. What? How much money have you moved for him? How deep are you? Jody looked at the floor. Millions. Maybe 15 million over 3 years. The number hung in the air like a bomb. Agent Little was taking notes. His partner was on his phone. Ben felt like he was watching his life explode from a distance. There's more, Little said grimly. Kurt Barrera is dangerous, Mr. Ochoa. He's suspected in at least 4 murders. People who tried to steal from him or testified against his organization. Your wife has information that could put him away for life, which makes her both valuable and expendable. He'll kill her, Ben said flatly. Possibly, which is why we need her cooperation. Full testimony in exchange for witness protection and a reduced sentence. Jody looked up sharply. Reduced sentence? Ben, I could still go to prison. You should go to prison. Danny's voice cracked across the room. You're a criminal. You lied to us. Danny, please. Jody reached for him, but he pulled away. Don't touch me. Ben watched his son run upstairs, heard the door slam. When he looked back at Jody, his eyes were cold. Where's the rest of it? The money Danny found was $20,000. Where's the rest? I don't. Don't lie to me. Not now. Jody's shoulders sagged. She walked to the fireplace, reached up behind the mantel, and pulled down a small key. There's a storage unit. Unit 47 at Secure Space on Highway 36. There's $800,000 there. It's supposed to be payment for Kurt's biggest deal yet. A shipment coming in next week. A shipment of what? Military weapons. Stolen from a base in Texas. Rifles, ammunition, even some explosive materials. It's going to the Sinaloa cartel. Kurt's been planning it for 6 months. Agent Little was already on his phone, calling for backup. Ben stood frozen, processing. His wife, the woman he'd loved, built a life with, had become everything he'd fought against in his old life. Ben, Jody whispered, I'm sorry. I never wanted this. I thought I could. Stop. His voice was flat. Just stop. There was a knock at the door, hard, aggressive. Too aggressive for law enforcement. Ben's instincts screamed danger. He saw Agent Little's hand move to his weapon, saw the concern in his eyes. Nobody ordered backup yet, Little's partner said. The knock came again, harder. Then a voice, heavily accented. Jody, open the door. Kurt wants to talk to you. Jody's face went white. No. No. He knows. He knows the FBI is here. He has people everywhere. Get down. Ben grabbed Danny, who had come back downstairs at the commotion, and pulled him behind the couch. The agents drew their weapons. The front door exploded inward, the lock shattered by a shotgun blast. 3 men stormed in, all armed. But they weren't prepared for federal agents. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Agent Little's partner took a round to the shoulder, went down hard. Little returned fire, dropping one of the intruders. Ben's training took over. He spotted a dropped weapon, grabbed it, and fired twice with the muscle memory of 1,000 training drills. 1 intruder fell. The 3rd scrambled back through the door, shouting in Spanish into a phone. The house fell silent except for the ringing in everyone's ears. Are you okay? Ben checked Danny, who was shaking but unharmed. Agent Little was already calling for backup and an ambulance, his partner clutching his bloody shoulder. Jody sat against the wall, tears streaming down her face. Then she stood, walked slowly to the stairs, and climbed them. Ben watched her, confused, as she disappeared into their bedroom. When she came back down 30 seconds later, she was holding something that made Ben's blood run cold. A gun, a Glock 19, professional grade, and a laptop case. This, she said, her voice hollow, is everything. Names, transactions, shipment routes, warehouse locations, offshore accounts. Everything about Kurt's operation. I've been keeping insurance. Agent Little's eyes widened. That could bring down his entire network. It will also get me killed, Jody said. Kurt has people in law enforcement, in government. The moment this gets filed into evidence, someone will tip him off. He'll come for me, for all of us. She looked at Ben, and he saw real fear in her eyes. Ben, I know what I did is unforgivable. But please, protect Danny. Kurt Barrera is a monster. He'll kill our son just to send a message. Ben took the laptop case, his mind already working. His old life, the skills he'd buried, the connections he'd tried to forget, they were all still there, just beneath the surface. And now he needed them. Because his family was in danger. His son was traumatized. His wife was a criminal who destroyed everything they'd built. And somewhere out there, Kurt Barrera was planning his next move. Ben Ochoa had tried to be normal, to be peaceful, to be just a father and a mechanic. But normal was over. Peace was gone. And the man who'd once been one of the government's most effective operatives was about to remind Kurt Barrera why some people should never be crossed. Agent Little, Ben said calmly, his eyes hard as steel. I need you to do me a favor. Tell your superiors that Ben Ochoa is offering his full cooperation. Tell them I'll help bring down Kurt Barrera and his entire operation. Mr. Ochoa, this is an FBI matter. With all due respect, Ben interrupted. The FBI just got shot at in my living room. Your partner is bleeding, and these people know where I live. My son is in danger. My wife is compromised. This became personal the moment they kicked down my door. He opened the laptop, began scanning through files. Years of intelligence training allowed him to process the information rapidly. Names, places, connections, it was all there. And something else. Kurt Barrera's operations had patterns, vulnerabilities, weaknesses. Ben looked up at Agent Little. I spent 12 years in covert operations. I know how men like Barrera think, how they operate. You need someone who can move in their world, someone who understands their language. That's me. What are you proposing? I'm proposing that we don't just arrest Kurt Barrera. We destroy everything he's built. We turn his organization against itself. We make him so desperate, so paranoid, that he makes mistakes. And then we watch him fall. A slow smile crossed Ben's face, but it wasn't friendly. It was the smile of a predator who'd been hibernating too long. I'm going to protect my son, Agent Little. And I'm going to make sure Kurt Barrera regrets the day he involved my family in his business. Chapter 4, Ghost Protocol. The safe house was a nondescript rental in Aurora, secured by the FBI within hours of the attack. Danny was sleeping fitfully in one bedroom, sedated by the trauma counselor the Bureau had brought in. Jody was in another room, being debriefed by federal prosecutors about her testimony. Ben sat at a kitchen table covered in files, maps, and printouts, his mind working through the problem like he used to work through mission parameters. Agent Glenn Little sat across from him, nursing black coffee. Your wife's information is solid. We've already started raids based on 3 of Barrera's warehouse locations. But he's gone to ground. None of our usual informants know where he is. He's not hiding, Ben said, studying a map of Denver and its surrounding areas. He's regrouping. A man like Barrera. He built his empire through fear and control. We just hit him, humiliated him, and seized his assets. He's not running. He's planning retaliation. Against your family. Against anyone he sees as a threat. Ben pointed to a name in the files. Marcos Wade. He's Barrera's enforcer, the one who does the wet work. Ex-cartel, spent time in a Mexican prison before crossing the border. He's the one who'll come after us. Little studied the file. How do you know this? Because it's what I would do. Ben's voice was matter-of-fact. Barrera's strength is his network, distributors, buyers, corrupt officials. But it's also his weakness. Everyone in that network now knows the FBI has his complete operations file. They'll be scrambling to cover their own involvement, which means they're desperate and dangerous. So what's your play? Ben pulled up a different file on the laptop. Barrera's got a lieutenant named Derek Doyle. He runs the distribution network in Colorado Springs. According to these files, Doyle's been skimming money for years, about $300,000 total. Barrera doesn't know because Doyle's good at covering his tracks. How does this help us? We're going to let Barrera find out about the skimming. We're going to make him think Doyle is also talking to the FBI. We create paranoia, mistrust. Criminal organizations fall apart when the boss stops trusting his people. Little leaned back. You want to start a war inside his organization. I want to make Barrera so busy dealing with internal threats that he can't focus on external ones. While he's purging his own ranks, we track him. Every move he makes to consolidate power leaves digital and physical trails. We follow those trails until we find him. And then, Ben's eyes were cold. And then we finish this. Over the next 48 hours, Ben worked with a precision that reminded him why he'd been good at his old job. He'd made calls to former colleagues, people who still operated in the shadows, trading favors and information. One of them, a hacker he'd worked with named Harvey Bridges, helped him plant evidence in Derek Doyle's digital accounts, making it look like Doyle had been in contact with the FBI. The trap was set. On the 3rd day, Derek Doyle was found dead in a Colorado Springs motel, 2 bullets in the back of his head. Execution style. Barrera's signature. He took the bait, Ben told Little. Now he's scared. Scared people make mistakes. But Ben was about to make a discovery that would complicate everything. Chapter 5. The Web Titans. Ben was reviewing financial records when he noticed something odd. The money Jody had been handling, it didn't match the volumes in Barrera's shipment logs. There was a discrepancy, millions of dollars that appeared in one ledger but not another. He called Jody into the kitchen. She looked haggard, her eyes red from crying. Part of Ben still felt rage when he looked at her, but another part, the part that had loved her for 15 years, felt sadness. "These numbers don't add up," he said, showing her the spreadsheets. "You said you moved about 15 million for Barrera, but his books show closer to 23 million moving through your real estate shell companies. Where did the extra 8 million go?" Jody's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Not now. Where's the money, Jody?" She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were filled with a different kind of fear. "I took it. Over 2 years, I skimmed $8 million from Barrera's operation." Ben stared at her. "You what?" "I knew this would eventually fall apart. I knew I'd either go to prison or end up dead. So I created my own insurance. Money hidden in offshore accounts, cryptocurrency, cash deposits and safety deposit boxes. I was building an escape fund." "For who?" "For you and Danny. For all of us." She couldn't meet his eyes. "Just for me and Danny. I was going to leave, Ben. Once I had enough saved, I was going to take Danny and disappear. Start over somewhere Barrera couldn't find us." The betrayal hit Ben like a physical blow. "You were going to leave me. Let me think you were just working late, being a good wife, while you planned to abandon me and take our son. I'm sorry." "Sorry." Ben's voice was dangerously quiet. "You destroyed our family, put our son in danger, and planned to leave me behind to clean up your mess. And now you're sorry." "Ben, please. Does Barrera know about the missing money?" Jody shook her head. "I don't think so. I was careful. If he finds out, he'll kill you. No deal, no witness protection, no mercy. He'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." "I know." Ben stood, paced the small kitchen. His mind was already working through the implications. $8 million. If Barrera discovered it, he'd become even more dangerous. But if they could use it as leverage. "Where's the money now?" he asked. Jody pulled out a piece of paper with a long string of numbers and letters. "Cryptocurrency wallet. The key is here. It's all in Bitcoin and Ethereum, spread across multiple wallets to avoid detection." Ben took the paper, studied it. An idea was forming. Dangerous, possibly illegal, but effective. "Agent Little needs to know about this," Jody said. "No, Ben. If the FBI knows, it becomes evidence. It gets seized, documented, filed. And someone on Barrera's payroll will find out about it. Then he'll know you stole from him, and your testimony becomes worthless because you're a thief too. So what do we do?" Ben looked at his wife, this stranger who'd been living in his house, sleeping in his bed, poisoning everything they'd built together. "We keep it secret, and we use it as bait." Later that night, Ben met with Harvey Bridges in a diner on the outskirts of Denver. Harvey looked like every hacker stereotype: thin, pale, nervous energy, but he was one of the best digital operators Ben had ever worked with. "I need you to do something that will probably get us both arrested," Ben said. Harvey grinned. "My favorite kind of job. What's the play?" "I need you to make it look like Derek Doyle, the Lieutenant Barrera just killed, was the one who stole $8 million from the operation. Plant evidence in his digital records, create transaction histories, make it airtight. You're framing a dead guy to protect someone else. I'm creating a narrative that makes sense. Barrera killed Doyle because he thought Doyle was talking to the FBI. Now we make him think Doyle was also stealing from him. It makes the killing justified in Barrera's mind, which means he won't keep digging. And the real thief stays hidden. For now." Harvey nodded. "I'll need 48 hours. You have 24. While Harvey worked his digital magic, Ben focused on the physical hunt. Using the information from Jody's files, he'd identified a pattern in Barrera's movements. The man had 3 safe houses in the Denver metro area, but there was a 4th property, a rural cabin in the mountains near Evergreen, that didn't appear in any official records. It was registered to a shell company buried under layers of corporate paperwork, the kind of place someone would use when they needed to disappear. Ben borrowed an FBI surveillance vehicle and drove up to scout the location. The cabin sat at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by pine trees and isolation. There were signs of recent activity: tire tracks, footprints in the mud, a chimney smoking. Someone was there. Ben didn't approach. Instead, he set up observation from a ridge half a mile away, using equipment he'd borrowed from his old agency contacts. Through a thermal scope, he could see heat signatures inside the cabin. At least 3 people, maybe 4. His phone buzzed. "Agent Little. We've got a problem," Little said. "Someone leaked your wife's cooperation to the press. It's going to hit the news in an hour. Once it does, every criminal Barrera has connections with will know she's testifying." Ben cursed. "Do you know who leaked it?" "Working on it. But Mr. Ochoa, you need to get back here. We need to move your family to a more secure location." Ben looked through the scope at the cabin. One of the heat signatures was moving around, pacing. "I found him. I found Barrera." "What? Where?" "Evergreen. Cabin in the mountains. I'm sending you coordinates. But Little, when you move, you do it fast, and you do it hard. He's got people with him, probably armed. We'll assemble a tactical team. Do not engage, Ochoa." "That's an order." Ben didn't respond. Through the scope, he saw the heat signature stop pacing and raise something to its head, a phone. Whoever was in that cabin had just gotten a call, and Ben had a sinking feeling he knew what that call was about. Chapter 6. The First Strike. Ben's instinct was confirmed 3 hours later. He'd returned to the safe house to find it in chaos. Danny was safe, but Jody was gone. What happened? Ben grabbed Agent Little by his jacket. "She ran," Little said grimly. "Saw the news report, panicked, and slipped out during a shift change. We've got an APB out, but she knows how to disappear," Ben finished. "She's been planning it for years." He fought down the rage, the betrayal. Danny sat on the couch, looking shell-shocked. "Dad, is Mom coming back?" Ben knelt in front of his son. "I don't know, buddy, but I'm going to keep you safe. That's a promise." "Why did she do this to us?" It was a question Ben couldn't fully answer. How do you explain to a 16-year-old that his mother chose crime over family, money over love? How do you tell him that sometimes people you trust the most are capable of the worst betrayals? "People make bad choices," Ben said finally. "And sometimes those choices spiral out of control. Your mom, she got in over her head and couldn't find a way out. That doesn't make it right, but maybe it helps explain it." Danny nodded, but his eyes were hollow. Ben had seen that look before, in the eyes of civilians caught in war zones, people who'd lost faith in the basic goodness of the world. It broke his heart to see it in his son. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Ochoa." The voice was smooth, accented, dangerous. "My name is Kurt Barrera. I believe we have a mutual interest to discuss." Ben's blood ran cold. He gestured frantically to Agent Little, who immediately began tracing the call. "I don't think we have anything to discuss." "Oh, but we do. You see, your wife has caused me considerable inconvenience. She has something that belongs to me. Information, money, leverage. And now she's disappeared. What do you want?" "I want what's mine. And I'm willing to make a trade. You help me find Jody, and I leave your son alone." "You refuse, and well, accidents happen. Boys his age are so vulnerable." Ben's grip on the phone tightened. "You threaten my son, and I will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Barrera laughed. Brave words from a mechanic. "But I've done my research, Mr. Ochoa. I know who you used to be. The Ghost, they called you. Very impressive resume. But that was a long time ago. You're soft now, domestic. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. We'll see. You have 72 hours to produce Jody and my money. After that, the boy becomes a liability I can't afford." The line went dead. Agent Little looked grim. "We traced it to a burner phone in downtown Denver. By the time we get a team there, he'll be gone." Ben's mind was racing. 72 hours. Jody was in the wind with $8 million. Barrera was making direct threats. And Danny was a target. "We need to go on offense," Ben said. "No more reacting. We take the fight to him." "How?" Ben pulled up the files on Barrera's operation. His weapons shipment, the one Jody was coordinating. "When is it supposed to arrive?" "According to the intel, tomorrow night. But we've already got a team ready to intercept it." "Don't." Little stared at him. "What?" "Don't intercept it. Let it get to the warehouse." "But we swap the contents. Instead of weapons, we fill those crates with tracking devices, fake ammunition, disabled rifles. We let Barrera think the shipment arrived safely, let him distribute it to his buyers. And then every buyer becomes a lead back to his network." Little finished, understanding dawning. "We take down not just Barrera, but everyone he does business with. Exactly. But it requires coordination, precision, and most importantly, it requires me on the inside. Absolutely not. You're not trained for it. I spent 12 years doing exactly this kind of operation. I can get close to Barrera's people, gain their trust, feed them information that makes them think I'm trying to trade Jody for Danny's safety. While I'm doing that, you're tracking every move they make. Little was quiet for a long moment. This is insane. If they figure out you're working with us, they won't. Because I'm not going to act like a Fed. I'm going to act like a desperate father who'll do anything to protect his son. Which you are. Which I am, Ben agreed. That's what makes it believable. What neither of them knew was that Jody was already making her own moves. In a motel room 20 miles outside Denver, she was on an encrypted phone with a man named Franklin McCarthy, an old contact from her criminal networking days, someone who specialized in creating new identities. I need papers, she said. Passport, driver's license, bank accounts. For me and my son. That's expensive, McCarthy replied. We're talking $200,000 for quality work. I have it. How long? 3 days. Jody looked at the burner laptop she'd bought at an electronics store. She'd accessed one of her hidden cryptocurrency wallets, transferred $2 million into a clean account. It was her escape fund, her insurance against the life she'd built falling apart. She thought about Ben, about Danny, and felt a wave of guilt. But guilt wouldn't keep her alive. Kurt Barrera was a monster, and she'd stolen millions from him. If she stayed, she'd end up dead or in prison. Her only option was to run, to start over, to disappear so completely that neither Barrera nor the FBI could find her. And if that meant leaving her family behind, well, Ben was resourceful. He'd protect Danny. He was good at that. She almost believed it. Back at the safe house, Ben was preparing for war. He'd called in more favors, reached out to more old contacts. By morning, he'd have equipment, weapons, and intelligence that would give him an edge. But he was also dealing with the emotional wreckage. Danny barely spoke, moving through the safe house like a ghost. The trauma counselor said he was in shock, processing a fundamental betrayal that would take years to fully understand. Dad, Danny's voice was small. Yeah, buddy. Are you going after Mom? Ben considered lying, protecting his son from the truth. But Danny deserved honesty. I'm going after the man who threatened you. Your mom, she made her choices. I can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Do you hate her? Did he? Ben searched his feelings and found a complicated tangle of betrayal, anger, and sadness. I hate what she did. I hate that she lied and put us in danger. But she's still your mom, and part of me will always care about her. That's what makes this so hard. Danny nodded, processing. I don't want you to get hurt. I won't. I promise. It was a promise Ben intended to keep. But keeping it would require him to become someone he'd sworn never to be again. The ghost, the operative who moved through shadows and ended threats before they could materialize. Kurt Barrera wanted a war. Ben Ochoa was about to give him one. Chapter 7. The Trap Springs. The weapons shipment arrived at a warehouse in Commerce City just after midnight. Ben watched from a concealed position across the street as Barrera's men unloaded wooden crates from a semi-truck. He wore black tactical gear borrowed from his FBI contacts, a comm unit in his ear connecting him to Agent Little and a surveillance team positioned a mile away. We've got eyes on 6 hostiles, Little's voice crackled. All armed. No sign of Barrera himself. He wouldn't be here personally, Ben replied. Too smart for that. But his Lieutenant Marcos Wade should be on site. He's the one supervising major shipments. Confirmed. Wade just exited the warehouse. He's inspecting the crates. Ben watched through night vision binoculars as Wade, a massive man with a shaved head and neck tattoos, used a crowbar to pry open one of the crates. Inside were assault rifles, exactly as expected. What Wade didn't know was that each weapon had been carefully modified by an FBI weapons specialist. They would fire, but after exactly 3 rounds, the firing pins would shatter, rendering them useless. The tracking devices were hidden in the ammunition boxes, nearly invisible chips that would broadcast location data the moment they were moved. Wade seemed satisfied. He made a phone call, spoke briefly in Spanish, then directed his men to load the crates into 3 separate vans. The distribution network in action. Let them go, Ben said into his comm. We track all 3 vehicles, see where they lead. For the next 6 hours, Ben and the FBI team followed the vans across Denver. One went to a house in Lakewood, a small-time dealer named Kent Vaughn who sold to local gangs. Another went to a ranch outside Boulder, a militia group led by a paranoid survivalist named Ronnie Richmond. The third van went to a warehouse in Aurora, where it was stored along with other illegal goods. By dawn, they had locations on 12 different buyers and storage facilities. Barrera's distribution network was mapped, documented, and ready to be rolled up. "We can move now," Little said. "Hit all these locations simultaneously, seize everything." "Not yet," Ben replied. "We're still missing the head of the snake. Barrera knows we have his files, knows Jody's cooperating. He's too smart to stay in any of his known locations. We need to draw him out." "How?" "By giving him what he wants." Ben had been working on a plan, a dangerous gambit that required perfect timing. He'd used his old contacts to leak information through Denver's criminal underworld. Whispers that Jody had been spotted in Grand Junction, that she was trying to cross into Utah with a large amount of cash. It was all fiction, carefully constructed bait. But Barrera didn't know that. At 3 p.m., Ben's phone rang. Kurt Barrera again. "Mr. Ochoa, your time is almost up." "I found her," Ben said. "Jody. She's in Grand Junction, holed up in a motel, and planning to cross into Utah tonight." There was a pause. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" "Because I want my son safe, and I know you're not going to let this go. So here's the deal. I give you Jody's location, you leave my family alone. Forever. No revenge, no retaliation. We're done." A very reasonable offer. "What motel?" "Not over the phone. We meet, face to face. You bring your guarantee of safety, something tangible, and I give you everything you need to find Jody." Another pause. Ben could almost hear Barrera's mind working, calculating risks and rewards. "Where?" "Red Rocks Amphitheater. Tomorrow at noon. Public place, lots of people. You bring 2 men maximum. I come alone. We talk, we exchange information, we walk away. And if this is a trap, then you kill me and my son ends up an orphan. I don't think either of us wants that. I just want this over, Barrera. I want to go back to fixing motorcycles and pretending none of this ever happened." The lie was smooth, practiced. Ben had spent years learning to sound convincing while lying. "Red Rocks. Noon. Don't be late, Mr. Ochoa." The line went dead. Agent Little was skeptical. He's going to bring more than 2 men. He'll have snipers positioned, backup teams, escape routes. Walking into that meeting is suicide. "Not if we control the environment," Ben replied. "Red Rocks is federal property. You can have your teams in position, dressed as tourists, maintenance workers, security. We surround him before he even knows we're there. And if he doesn't show, he'll show. His ego won't let him walk away from a chance to meet the man who's been causing him so much trouble." What Ben didn't say was that he had a backup plan, something he was keeping from the FBI. He'd reached out to one more old contact, a man named Neil Nielsen, who'd worked Black Ops alongside Ben in the old days. Nielsen ran a private security company now, specializing in problem-solving for wealthy clients who couldn't go to the police. "I need a team," Ben had told Nielsen. 5 men, all experienced, all willing to work outside legal boundaries. "You planning something the feds won't approve?" "I'm planning to make sure my son stays safe, whatever it takes." "I'm in. What's the pay?" Ben thought about the $8 million in cryptocurrency that Jody had stolen. $1 million. Each. Nielsen had whistled. "Must be serious. Life and death." "Then you've got your team." Now, as Ben prepared for the meeting at Red Rocks, he had 2 plans running simultaneously, the official FBI operation and his own private backup. If things went south, if Barrera had some trick prepared that the FBI couldn't counter, Nielsen's team would be there. Danny was secured in a safe house with round-the-clock protection. Ben had said goodbye that morning, not knowing if he'd see his son again. "Be careful, Dad," Danny had said, and Ben heard the fear in his voice. "Always am, buddy. This will all be over soon." He hoped that was true. Chapter 8, Convergence. Red Rocks Amphitheater sat carved into red sandstone, a natural monument that drew tourists from around the world. At noon on a Tuesday in October, it was moderately crowded, visitors taking photos, hiking the trails, enjoying the views. Ben arrived early, positioned himself near the top of the amphitheater with a clear view of all approaches. He wore a light jacket concealing a weapon, and an earpiece connecting him to both Agent Little's team and Neil Nielsen's private security operators. "We've got sniper coverage on 3 positions," Little reported. "Teams positioned at each entrance. No sign of Barrera yet." "He's here," Ben replied quietly. "Probably been here for an hour, watching, making sure it's not a trap." And Ben was right. Kurt Barrera emerged from a group of tourists, flanked by 2 men in casual clothes. He was younger than Ben expected, maybe 40, well-dressed, looking more like a businessman than a crime lord. But his eyes were cold, calculating, dangerous. "Mr. Ochoa," Barrera said, approaching. "You're punctual. I appreciate that. Let's get this over with," Ben replied. They moved to a more isolated area, the bodyguards maintaining distance. Barrera studied Ben with undisguised curiosity. "You're not what I expected," Barrera said. "The ghost. The man who made generals disappear and toppled governments from the shadows. You look so ordinary." "That was the point." Barrera smiled. "I respect your skills, Mr. Ochoa. Under different circumstances, I might have hired you. But you've become a problem. You and your thieving wife. I told you, I can give you Jody. Grand Junction, Valley View Motel, room 17. She's there right now, probably asleep. She thinks she's safe. And the money she stole?" "What money?" Barrera's expression hardened. "Don't play games. I know she took something. $8 million, give or take. Did she share that with you before she ran?" "I don't know anything about $8 million, Ben said truthfully. "She had a duffel bag with cash, but it was seized by the FBI. Liar." Barrera's voice was ice. "She stole from me, and you're protecting her. I'm protecting my son. There's a difference." Barrera pulled out a phone, made a call. "Go to the Grand Junction location. Verify if the target is there." He waited, his eyes never leaving Ben's face. This was the critical moment. If Barrera's team found the motel empty, if they realized it was a trap, everything would fall apart. But Ben had planned for this. Using his contacts, he'd arranged for a woman matching Jody's description, a female undercover agent, to be visible in the motel parking lot at exactly this time. From a distance, with the right wig and clothes, she'd pass as Jody long enough to confirm Ben's information. 5 minutes later, Barrera's phone buzzed. He read a text message, and something in his expression shifted, satisfaction mixed with predatory anticipation. "It seems you're telling the truth. The target is confirmed at the location." "Then we're done," Ben said. "You have what you want. Leave my family alone." "Of course," Barrera agreed smoothly. Too smoothly. Ben saw it coming in the subtle shift of Barrera's weight, the signal to his bodyguards. They were going to kill him right here, in public, and fade into the crowds before anyone realized what happened. But Ben had seen it coming because he'd been expecting betrayal. "Now," he said into his calm. Everything happened at once. FBI agents emerged from the crowds, weapons drawn. Barrera's bodyguards reached for their guns, but were tackled by undercover operators. Barrera himself tried to run, but Agent Little appeared directly in his path. "Kurt Barrera, you're under arrest for attempted murder, weapons trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit murder." Barrera's face contorted with rage. "You set me up, just like you set up everyone you've ever worked with," Ben replied calmly. But Barrera was still smiling, and that made Ben nervous. "You think this is over? You think arresting me solves anything? I have lawyers, Mr. Ochoa. Very good lawyers. I'll be out in 72 hours, and when I am, I'll finish what I started." "No," Ben said quietly. "You won't." Because while the FBI had been focused on the arrest, Neil Nielsen's team had been executing the second part of Ben's plan. They'd raided the Aurora warehouse where the third van had delivered weapons. But instead of just seizing the guns, they'd found something else. Barrera's backup records, his real accounting books that documented everything. Bribes to police officers, payments to corrupt judges, deals with international crime syndicates. And they'd found Marcos Wade, Barrera's enforcer, who was currently being offered a very attractive deal by federal prosecutors. Testify against Barrera, give up the entire network, and receive a reduced sentence. Wade, facing life in prison without parole, had taken the deal within an hour. "Your organization is gone," Ben told Barrera as agents led him away. "Wade's talking, your buyers are being rounded up, and every corrupt official you've paid off is about to be exposed. You're not walking away from this." Barrera's smile finally faded, replaced by cold fury. "Your wife still stole from me. That money. will never be found, Ben interrupted. Because Jodi Ochoa is about to disappear so completely that even I won't be able to find her. And that's exactly what she deserves. To spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, knowing that she destroyed everything for money she'll never feel safe spending. It was true. Ben had made a decision. He wasn't going to turn over Jodi's stolen money to the FBI. Let her have it. Let her build whatever new life she could, far away from him and Danny. It was a small mercy, perhaps undeserved, but it was also a punishment. Exile from the family she'd betrayed. As Barrera was loaded into a federal transport vehicle, Ben stood watching, feeling the weight of the past weeks settling on him. It should have felt like victory. Barrera was caught, his network dismantled, Danny was safe. But it felt hollow, because his family was still broken. Chapter 9, Resolution. 3 weeks later, Ben stood in his garage, working on the Triumph Bonneville. The house was different now, quieter, emptier. Jodi's things were gone, removed by federal agents as evidence. The bullet holes in the walls had been patched, but not painted, leaving pale scars that reminded Ben of everything they'd been through. Danny was at school, or rather, he was supposed to be at school. Ben had received a call from the principal an hour ago. Danny had gotten into a fight with another student who'd made a comment about his mother. The other kid needed stitches. Ben drove to the school, his heart heavy. When he arrived, Danny sat in the principal's office, his knuckles bloodied, his face defiant. Mr. Ochoa, Principal Morrison began. We need to discuss Danny's behavior. Give us a moment, Ben interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. He led Danny outside, sat with him on a bench near the soccer field. For a long time, neither spoke. You want to tell me what happened? Ben finally asked. Tyler Chin said my mom was a criminal and a whore. So I punched him. Did it make you feel better? Danny shrugged. For a second. And then I felt worse. Because it's true. She is a criminal. She lied to us. She almost got us killed. And then she ran away. And everyone knows it. Ben put his arm around his son. Your mom made terrible choices. That's true. But you're not defined by her choices, Danny. You're your own person. People keep looking at me differently. Like I'm going to turn out like her. Then prove them wrong. Be better than the hand you were dealt. That's all any of us can do. They sat in silence, watching clouds drift across an October sky. Dad, Danny's voice was quiet. Do you think she's okay? Mom, I don't know, buddy. I hope so. It was partially true. Jodi had contacted Ben exactly once in the 3 weeks since Red Rocks. A brief, encrypted email with no return address. I'm safe. I'm sorry. Tell Danny I love him, even though I know that doesn't mean much anymore. The money is yours if you want it. I left the access codes in our safety deposit box. But I understand if you don't want anything from me. Take care of each other. Jay? Ben hadn't touched the money. He'd destroyed the codes, let those millions drift in digital purgatory. He and Danny didn't need blood money to build their new life. What they needed was healing, and that would take time. Kurt Barrera was in federal custody, held without bail. His trial was scheduled for the following spring, and with Marcos Wade's testimony, plus the mountain of evidence from Jodi's files, conviction was all but certain. Barrera faced multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. The corrupt officials he'd paid off were falling like dominoes. 2 judges, 4 police officers, and a district attorney had all been arrested. The investigation had exposed a web of corruption that reached far beyond Barrera's organization. Agent Glenn Little had visited Ben the week before, bringing news and a strange offer. The brass is impressed with how you handled this, Little had said. They want to know if you'd consider consulting for the FBI, helping with cases that require someone with your particular skill set. I'm retired, Ben had replied. That's what you said last time. But you came back when your family needed you. And my family fell apart in the process. Little had nodded, understanding. The offer stands. If you change your mind. Now, sitting with Danny in the October sunshine, Ben considered the future. His motorcycle shop would reopen next week. He'd already had several calls from old customers, people who'd heard about what happened and wanted to show their support. Life would gradually return to something resembling normal. But it would be a different normal. A smaller, more cautious normal. Just him and Danny, figuring out how to be a family of 2. You know what I think? Danny said suddenly. What's that? I think Mom was scared. I think she got in over her head and didn't know how to get out. So she kept making worse decisions. And I think. He paused, swallowing hard. I think part of her wanted to stay, wanted to be with us. But the other part, the scared part, won. Ben looked at his son with new respect. That's a very mature way to look at it. I'm still mad at her. I might be mad forever, but I don't want to hate her. Hate just makes you bitter. When did you get so wise? I have a good dad. The words hit Ben harder than any physical blow. He pulled Danny into a hug, and his son didn't pull away. That evening, Ben received an unexpected visitor. Neil Nielsen arrived at the house, carrying a manila envelope. Wanted to settle accounts, Nielsen said. I never paid you, Ben replied. The operation at Red Rocks was all FBI. Yeah, but you offered. And I did some work on the side, tracking down some of Barrera's international contacts, making sure they knew their business partner was no longer operational. Consider it done. Nielsen handed Ben the envelope. Inside were photographs, surveillance shots of various men, all crossed out with red marker. What am I looking at? Barrera's overseas connections. The ones who might have tried to finish what he started. They've all been convinced that seeking revenge against you would be bad for their health. Ben stared at the photos. Nielsen, please tell me you didn't. I didn't kill anyone, Nielsen assured him. Just had some very persuasive conversations. Let them know that Ben Ochoa has friends in low places, and that any attempt to harm you or your son would be answered with extreme prejudice. I can't accept this. You already have. Consider it a favor between old friends. You watched my back plenty of times. Now I'm watching yours. After Nielsen left, Ben looked through the photos again. Part of him was troubled by the implications, his old life reaching forward to protect his new one. But another part, the part that would do anything to keep Danny safe, was grateful. He built a fire in the backyard pit that night, and one by one, he burned the photographs. Let the past stay in the past. Let the darkness remain in shadow. 2 months later, on Christmas Eve, Ben and Danny decorated a small tree in their living room. The house had been repainted, the scars covered. They developed new routines, father and son, learning to be a family in a different configuration. Danny had started seeing a therapist, working through his feelings about Jody's betrayal. He was doing better, slowly healing. He'd even started dating a girl from his soccer team, Priscilla, a smart, kind girl who knew about Danny's situation and didn't judge him for it. Ben's shop was thriving. Word had spread about the mechanic who took down a crime boss, and while Ben found the attention uncomfortable, it had brought in business. He'd even hired an assistant, a young veteran named Andy Drake who reminded Ben of himself at that age. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, moments when Danny would go quiet, when Ben would see Jody's face in every crowd. The trauma didn't just disappear, but they were surviving. They were healing. They were building something new from the rubble of what had been destroyed. On Christmas morning, Danny found 2 gifts under the tree. One was from Ben, a leather jacket, high-quality riding gear for the vintage motorcycle they'd been working on together. The other was unexpected. It was a small package, no return address, postmarked from Vancouver. Inside was a letter and a photograph. Danny, I know I have no right to contact you. I know what I did is unforgivable, but I wanted you to know that I think about you every day. I wonder if you're doing okay in school, if you're still playing soccer, if you've forgiven me, though I know you probably haven't. The photo is from when you were 5. We'd gone to that pumpkin patch, and you'd insisted on picking the biggest pumpkin you could find. Your dad had to carry it because you couldn't lift it, but you were so proud. That was a good day. We had so many good days. I hope you have good days again. I hope your dad is taking care of you. I know he is. He's always been the better parent. I hope you grow up strong and kind and nothing like me. I love you. I always will. Even if I never see you again, know that. Mom. The photo showed the 3 of them, Ben, Jody, and 5-year-old Danny, standing in a pumpkin patch, all smiling, all happy. A moment frozen in time before everything fell apart. Danny stared at it for a long time, tears running down his face. Ben sat beside him, saying nothing, just being present. Finally, Danny spoke. Can I keep it? The photo? Of course. I'm still mad at her. You're allowed to be mad and still love someone. Feelings are complicated. Danny nodded, carefully putting the photo in his room. He'd look at it sometimes, Ben knew, when he needed to remember that his mother had once loved him, even if she'd proven incapable of showing it properly. That afternoon, father and son rode their motorcycles up into the mountains. The Triumph Ben had been rebuilding and a smaller bike they'd put together for Danny. The air was crisp, the roads clear, and for a few hours, they were just two people enjoying the ride. As they stopped at a scenic overlook, Danny turned to Ben. "Dad, thanks for not giving up on me." "Never," Ben replied. "You're my son. I'll always fight for you." "I know. And Dad, I'm glad I got you instead of her." It was the highest compliment Danny could give, and Ben felt his throat tighten with emotion. They stood there together, looking out over the snow-covered peaks, father and son, survivors of a war they'd never asked to fight. And in that moment, despite everything they'd lost, despite all the pain and betrayal and trauma, they were okay. Not perfect, not healed, but okay. And sometimes, okay is enough. Far away, in a small apartment in Vancouver, Jody Ochoa, who now went by Joyce Rowe, a new name for a new life, sat looking at her own copy of the pumpkin patch photo. She'd built a comfortable existence with her stolen millions, but comfort wasn't the same as happiness. She thought about Ben, about Danny, about everything she'd destroyed, and she wondered if there was any amount of money that could fill the hole where her family used to be. The answer, she knew, was no. Some things, once broken, could never be repaired. Some choices, once made, could never be undone. And some people, once betrayed, would never trust again. She'd have to live with that. But Ben and Danny, they would live, truly live, moving forward without her weight dragging them down. And maybe that was her gift to them, the freedom to heal without her toxicity poisoning their future. In the end, that was the only decent thing she'd done. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.